There was a time in this country when we were together to do something very important, and we need to mobilize the entire world around those kinds of things. I know that may seem like a stretch given where we are. What we believed to begin with was that there wasn't nearly enough behavioral science research going on climate change. So we started searching the literature and began by looking at, okay, so let's find all the research that's relevant to policies about reducing greenhouse gas emissions. And we found something like 11,000 papers that in some way had to do with electricity generation and policy and so on. Well, we only found about less than 1% of those papers that were doing experimental evaluations of strategies for getting policies adopted. So there are policies that are claimed to be beneficial, but nobody's working on how you can systematically get those widely and effectively adopted. We think a lot more research is needed on that. We think a lot more research is needed on how you influence households and how you influence organizations to reduce their greenhouse gas emissions. And the behavior analysis community has the skills to do that. And what we found is that in the 70s and 80s, there was a lot of research done by behavior, well, not a lot, but a significant amount of behavioral science research on how you could change environmentally relevant behaviors. Sometimes it was recycling, some of it was fossil fuel use, some of it was electricity generation. But there's been an extinction effect. The last 20 years, there's been very little research. I think one of the things we badly need is for behavior analysts to crank up some of that research and also to scale it up. And one of my concerns is that if you talk to behavioral scientists who are not behavior analysts, they might look at a study which we think is a model for what you could do because, for example, we have 3 households and we're recording on a daily basis their use of electricity, and we feed back to the first household what they're doing and don't give feedback to the other 2, and you see a reduction in use. Well, this is a multiple baseline design, and these designs can be strong inference, provide strong inferences about what works and what doesn't. Well, you did that across 3 households. Well, that couldn't be relevant to the billions of people that need to be affected. Well, actually it could. Then the question is scaling up. So I'm hoping that one of the things that behavior analysts will do is that they'll start to take some of these studies that were done in the 80s, apply them to all of the different behaviors involved in reducing greenhouse gas emissions, and start to show that this stuff can be not only replicated, but can be scaled up. There's technologies that are now available that can facilitate doing that. I was born on June 6, 1944. That was the day that the Allies invaded Normandy. And they had prepared for that for over a year. And it was the biggest battle that had happened in the Second World War up to that point. And I've always been, there was a book written by Ambrose, who is a historian of the Second World War. And he describes in the first part of that book how all over the country, people started doing things that were needed to prepare for that. There was a landing craft that was designed and built by a company in Louisiana that ended up being the landing craft that was used in all of the Pacific and the Atlantic invasions. There were tanks, there were planes, all of these things, and all these people working. And so the day comes and the notice comes that that the Allies have landed in Normandy. And Ambrose takes you around the country to all the places where all these people have been working to do their share to try and make a difference. And he takes you to a cafe in Montana where the notice comes, it's a breakfast, everybody's at breakfast, and the notice comes over the radio, and the hush falls over the place. Everybody's quiet, and they're just listening for the next piece of information about this, right? There was a time in this country when we were together to do something very important, and we need to mobilize the entire world around those kinds of things. I know that may seem like a stretch given where we are, but that's what we need to do. We need to get everybody to begin to think about what they can do. And so I hope that our task force has some impact on getting the resources put together to do the kind of research that's needed. Not just behavior analysts, but anybody who thinks they can make this happen, but we can help them measure it, we can help them experimentally evaluate it so that you know that we did this and it made a difference, or we did it, didn't make a difference, what are we going to try next?
The 6th of June in the year of 44, the Empire lads sailed out from Poole to join with thousands more. The largest fleet the world had seen, we sailed in close array.
If you're into this channel is purely ran by patrons. If you can, support. Let's build this community and this message and show the world what behavior analysis can do.
There was not one man in all our crew but knew what lay in store. For we had waited for that day